Before I get into my main topic, I want to say a few words about what Buddhism is all about. I want to define what Buddhism is. Buddhism is a teaching of self-examination. It's nothing but asking one question: what am I? What am I? In the 13th century in Japan, the master Dogen defined Buddhism this way: studying the Buddha Dharma means studying the self. We cannot define Buddhism in any other way. Our teachers, such as Shakyamuni and Shinran, devoted their entire lives to asking this question: what am I? We can say that their teachings were answers to the question. Or we could say that they are all insights gained in the process of examining the self. Now let me talk about the topic of this seminar. Topic of this seminar is what is Amida Buddha? The subtitle is Shin Buddhist teaching of the two Buddhas, Shakyamuni and Shinran. I've selected this topic because Reverend Takata told me that some members of the West LA temple wanted to know the meaning of Amida Buddha. So today I will explain the meaning of Amida Buddha. First, let me talk about the word Amida. Okay? And here I spelled out this Amida. Amida is an abbreviated name in Japanese. Okay? It is not the original Sanskrit word. Okay? And Amida Buddha actually has two names. So in the original Sanskrit, two original Sanskrit names is Amitabha and Amitayus. Okay? These are the two names one Buddha has. And Amitabha consists of two words, Amita and Abha, limitless light. And Amitayus, Amita and Ayus, limitless life. And probably you know, light is a symbol of wisdom, and life is a symbol of compassion. So Amida is a symbol, okay? Symbol of limitless light, limitless wisdom, and it is a symbol of limitless compassion. Okay? But his name means that, okay, these two. And Amida comes from this word Amita, okay? Amida. This means limitless or immeasurable, okay? Immeasurable, okay? So anyway, this is etymological meaning of the word Amida. Okay. So Amida or Amida Buddha is probably the most important concept in Jodo Shinshu, in Shin Buddhism. That Shin Buddhism is a teaching of Shinran Shonin. But people often have a shallow understanding of this word Amida. Or worse, they often misunderstand this word. Okay? If we have a wrong understanding of the concept of Amida, our understanding of Shin Buddhism is totally wrong. So today, I will explain the meaning of Amida Buddha by discussing the differences between Shakyamuni Buddha and Amida Buddha. So in part one, I will discuss the life and the teaching of Shakyamuni. I do so because Shakyamuni is known as the founder of Buddhism, and without discussing his life and teaching, I cannot explain the meaning of Amida Buddha. Okay. In part two, I will discuss Buddha's last message and a message forgotten after the teacher's passing. In the first half of part 2, I will discuss the last message of Shakyamuni that he left immediately before his passing. In his message, he told his disciples that they should rely on the Dharma, not on human beings. He said so because there was a tendency that his disciples relied on Shakyamuni, a human being, rather than the Dharma. In other words, Shakyamuni saw the two types of Buddhism developing within his Sangha. The two types of Buddhism were Shakyamuni-centered Buddhism and Dharma-centered Buddhism. So in his final message, Shakyamuni cautioned his disciples that the authentic Buddhism was the Dharma-centered Buddhism, not Shakyamuni-centered Buddhism. In the second half of the part 1, I will discuss the historical development after the passing of Shakyamuni. Although Shakyamuni emphasized the importance of the Dharma or the Dharma-centered Buddhism, his disciples forgot this important message by Shakyamuni after the teacher's passing. Buddhism became Shakyamuni-centered. Okay, in part 3, I will say that 3 centuries after the passing of Shakyamuni, a Buddhist tradition called Mahayana appeared in India. This tradition tried to restore the original Buddhism, the Dharma-centered Buddhism. It is in this historical context that the concepts such as Amida were created. Amida symbolizes the Dharma. The teaching of Amida's liberating people means that it is Amida or the Dharma that liberates people. It is not the Shakyamuni that liberates people. This means the authentic Buddhism is a Dharma-centered Buddhism or Amida-centered Buddhism. In part 3, I will define the meaning of Amida as a summary. Although Amida can be defined in several ways, the most important meaning of Amida is that it is a symbol of the Dharma. It symbolizes the Dharma that Shakyamuni told his disciples to rely on. Okay, with that introduction, let me get in part 1. Tradition tells us that Shakyamuni was born a prince in a small kingdom in India. He was given the name Siddhartha, and he grew up without knowing the reality of human misery. When Shakyamuni was a child, his life was easy. And he did not have many objects of attachment. So anyway, let me draw a picture of a boat going upward. Okay. So this is Shakyamuni. Okay, this is Shakyamuni. When he was a child, okay, he didn't have many objects of attachment. But as he grew up, he started to have these values, positive values, objects of his attachment, like fame and status, possessions, or things like that. He developed attachment. See, so this boat started to have all kinds of objects of attachment. Then this drawing became a little difficult. Initially, it was so easy. This boat was going so smoothly. Okay? But as Shakyamuni grew up, he became attached to various things such as fame and status and position. And so as he grew, he accumulated these, developed attachment to various objects. And he wanted to maintain these objects. Okay? But it was not easy for him to do so. The more objects of attachment he had, the more difficult his going became. And he realized that the reality of impermanence was coming from the opposite direction. Impermanence was coming from the opposite direction. There are frictions between this flow, this and impermanence. And he desired to go maintain these things against this impermanence. Okay? And tradition tells us there were 4 gates around the castle in which he lived. When Shakyamuni grew up, he went out to the first gate one day and saw an old man, and he learned that he had to become old someday. And when he went out of the second and the third gates, he learned that he had to become sick and die someday. This way, he learned that the reality of impermanence is absolute and beyond his control. So all the things he cherished had to be lost someday. He was scared by the prospect of his getting old and sick and the prospect of dying. Now he became extremely depressed, and he could not live his life like before. He wondered, how can people live peacefully having known that everything must be lost someday? He was really depressed. And on one of those days, Shakyamuni went out of the 4th gate. Good thing it was the 4th gate. Fortunately, this time he saw something wonderful. He met a traveling monk whose face was shining because of his wisdom. Deeply moved by this traveling monk, Shakyamuni awakened his desire to become a person like him. His aspiration for Buddhahood was awakened. So when he was 29, he left his family to seek the way. So after Shakyamuni left his family, he visited spiritual leaders of his time. And although he studied various doctrines and practices under them, he thought that they could not lead him to the ultimate peace that he was seeking. After having spent 6 years in meditation and ascetic practices, he renounced all of them. Then he decided to sit under a tree. When he abandoned the traditional practices, his co-practitioners criticized him. And they said, Siddhartha has become a backslider. He has taken to an easier way of living. But with firm determination, Shakyamuni said to himself, never shall I stir from this seat. Never shall I stir from this seat until I have attained the perfect awakening. And he started to meditate. After renouncing the traditional practices, Shakyamuni received a pot of milk from a maiden to recover his health. He then sat under a tree and meditated. Then what was his meditation? What was his meditation? Or what does it mean to meditate in Buddhism? How is Buddhist meditation different from yogic meditation or transcendental meditation? As I have said earlier, Buddhism is nothing but self-examination, nothing but self-examination. Buddhist meditation is designed for examining self. It's not a way of enjoying trance, or not designed for enjoying the peace of mind. Shakyamuni attained earlier, Shakyamuni attained the highest level of yogic meditation called thoughtlessness, but he considered it meaningless, good for nothing. In his meditation under the tree, Shakyamuni intensely examined the self. Examine question: what am I? Do I know? Do I have something permanent in myself? And then he examined his body. He examined all the things that formed his body, things such as skin, muscle, bones, and blood. He realized that all those things were constantly moving, changing, and flowing. He realized there's nothing permanent in his body. And then he examined his body, all the things that formed his mind, things such as sensation, conception, volition, and consciousness. He realized all the things that were forming his mind were moving, changing, and flowing. He learned that there's nothing permanent in his mind. In this way, he could not find anything permanent in his body and mind. He could not find anything permanent in the self. One morning, Shakyamuni was sitting under a tree. He was then 35 years old. When he looked at the morning star, he attained the great awakening. He became the Buddha awakened one. When clearly understood the Dharma, he became an awakened one. The Dharma means the truth. Dharma means truth. And the Dharma means the truth of impermanence. Impermanence. Shakyamuni clearly understood that there was nothing permanent outside himself and inside himself. And so insight into the Dharma of impermanence was the content of his awakening. When he attained enlightenment, Shakyamuni said, my life is already spent. The universal working is already established. These two sentences describe the two aspects, negative and the positive aspects of his awakening experience. Since these two aspects are quite important, let me elaborate. The negative aspect of his awakening expressed in my life is already spent. This means a spiritual death in which the permanent self, Atman, is negated by the truth of impermanence. Second, the positive aspect of his awakening that is expressed in the words, universal working is already established. Spiritual birth in which the true self that is one with the truth of impermanence is realized. Okay. In the negative aspect of his awakening, the truth of impermanence made him recognize the emptiness of the Atman, or the substantial self that he thought he had. It made him see the futility of his attachments to all his ideas, thoughts, and viewpoints. This way, the truth of impermanence was a negative truth, and it humbled him. So it was an experience that should be called a spiritual death. It's a negative experience. And second and the third, second and the positive aspect of Shakyamuni's awakening experience is expressed in his statement, the universal working is already established. When he said so, he was seeing the truth of impermanence as a positive truth. Positive truth. Now impermanence turned into a positive truth. Shakyamuni realized the truth of impermanence was actually the universal flow of life. It was a gigantic, dynamic flow of life. It was a creative flow of life. He realized that all the things, not only the animate things, but also inanimate things were manifesting the newness and freshness of life. They were all, he saw that all existing things are fellow participants in the universal flow of life. He realized that all existing things were the fellow components of the universal flow of life. Now he came to see the whole world as a creative world, and he started to see himself as one creative component of the created world. Now he started to live his life becoming one with the truth of impermanence. Becoming one with the truth of impermanence means that he became a constant seeker, constant learner. Now he was liberated from all kinds of fixed ideas, viewpoints, and opinions, being totally liberated from all fixed ideas and concepts. He started to learn from everything. Okay? He became a constant seeker and learner. That's expressed in his statement, the universal working is established. So the last part of his biography, A3580, teaching, activities, and death. He travels to many places in India and shares his teaching with people. At Kushinagara, he enters parinirvana at the age of 80. Here, word parinirvana literally means complete extinction, or perfect combustion. So Shakyamuni tells us that the goal of Buddhism is attaining parinirvana, complete combustion of our lives. He teaches us that our death should be like a full stop, like a complete end. Parinirvana means complete combustion. Or the end of our life should not be a comma. Should not be a comma. It should be a full stop. We should live our lives in such a manner that we have a deep sense of fulfillment or contentment. We should not live our lives in such a manner that we feel the need to have another life, another future existence at the end of our lives. We must fulfill our life, complete our lives. We must have parinirvana at the end of our lives. That's what Shakyamuni teaches us. That's the kind of life Shakyamuni, that kind of ending he had at the end of his life. Okay, now, next topic here. Here, let me discuss an outline of Buddhism, outline of his teaching that is called the three Dharma marks. I believe Buddhism was originally a very simple teaching, Although there are now many Buddhist schools and traditions and many doctrines and theories, the original teaching of Shakyamuni was a very simple one, very simple one. When non-Buddhists asked Shakyamuni and his disciples a question, what is Buddhism? They always answered the question with the three concepts. And they're spelled out as suffering, or some people say difficulty is a better translation. Suffering, dukkha, and impermanence, anicca, and selflessness, anatman. These three concepts are called the marks because they distinguish Buddhism from other religions and philosophies. So now let me discuss the three Dharma marks in terms of Shakyamuni's life. Okay, so this was Shakyamuni's life. Okay, Shakyamuni was going this way. Okay, and this was age 1 to 29. Okay, age 29. Okay, this impermanence. Okay, this overwhelmed him. Okay, initially, he thought he could maintain this some things fixed, attached object, but when he was 35, he clearly understood the impossibility of maintaining these attached or fixed objects. Now he gained insight into the absoluteness of the impermanence. This is the Dharma. Okay, Dharma. So initially he had all kinds of difficulties. He wanted to go this way, maintain attached object, but impermanence didn't allow him to maintain them. So there are frictions. Okay, so these frictions were the suffering. This is the suffering. This is the suffering. Okay, these frictions, this frustration. Okay, this. But when he recognized absolutely them, he made this 180-degree turn. So crucial point is that he 35, he gained insight in absoluteness of impermanence. Okay, so this is, and when he became one with this impermanence, okay, then his life became so easy, no friction between. He started living life becoming one with it. Then this is called the selflessness. Free and very dynamic way of living, okay? Natural way of living. That's called selflessness. See, so these are the three concepts. Okay? 1, 2, 3. I told you that originally Buddhism was a very simple teaching. Okay? The reason I say so is that Shakyamuni used to say that he would talk about only two things. He often said, I talk about two things, suffering and liberation from suffering. That's what he said. I don't talk about anything else. Suffering and the liberation from suffering. And in other words, he said, I talk about only two things, sickness and cure. That's all he said he talked about. He wouldn't talk about anything else, about the soul or the God or life after death. He is not concerned in those philosophical or metaphysical questions. I'm realistic. I'm suffering. I want to get out of suffering. That's the only thing I'm interested in. And he talked about two things. Okay, so then what is sickness and cure here? Okay, so this is sickness. This suffering is sickness. He wanted to have this sickness, suffering overcome. Then what is the cure? Okay, this is the cure. Impermanence is the cure. When he gained the insight into impermanence, he was totally turned around, okay? Because this is an illusion. This was a mistake he was making. This direction was a mistake. So this is the reality. This is the truth. So now he was overwhelmed, recognized the correctness of this direction and turned around. It's like taking medicine here. Then he became a cured person. This cured person. This concept is a cured condition. Cured condition. Condition. So these three concepts fully explain the entirety of Shakyamuni's experiences and Shakyamuni's teaching. That's why I say this Shakyamuni teaching is so simple. Shakyamuni and his disciples always answered the question, what is Buddhism? Buddhism is the teaching that talks of three concepts: suffering, impermanence, selflessness, sickness, medicine, and cured condition. That's all. See? And here, okay, interesting. It's very interesting. Okay? Before his enlightenment, he was going this way, okay? Going against the flow, against impermanence. Then that he had difficulty. Difficult. But now recognizing absoluteness of this truth, he turned around and when he went against impermanence, he had suffering. But when he decided to go along, not again, along with impermanence, his going was so smooth. See? So when he was going against impermanence was the devil, worst enemy, torturing him, intimidating him, taking away all the things he cherished. But now he understood the absoluteness of it and became one with it. Then he started to go along with it. Then impermanence became the best friend, more like something like a guardian. Devil turning into angel, devil turning into guardian. I think Buddhism is a very interesting teaching, okay, talking about the Dharma of impermanence. But if you go against it, it's a worst enemy, but you accept it and go along with it, it's a best enemy. It's a creative energy, creative force that keeps you going. Now, next one I will discuss is the yardstick. These three marks are the yardstick for judging the authenticity of Buddhist traditions. Okay, so I believe that all the Buddhist traditions must be based upon these three concepts. Otherwise, they are not authentic Buddhist teachings. These three concepts are a yardstick by which you can judge whether a certain Buddhist tradition is authentic or not. If Buddhist traditions such as Zen, Shinshu, Nichiren, or Tibetan Buddhism, if they are authentic Buddhism, they must be based upon these three concepts. Otherwise, they cannot be considered authentic Buddhism. If authentic Buddhism must talk about these three concepts, okay? So it is a kind of yardstick to judge the authenticity of any Buddhist traditions. And I believe Shin Buddhism talks about these three concepts. Actually, when I studied Shinran Shonin's teaching, Shinran Shonin just talks about these three things. See? Three things: suffering, Amida Buddha, Dharma, Amida Buddha, and here, liberation, birth in Pure Land. Three things. This is the self-power. This is the other power. All Jodo Shinshu concepts can be explained within this context. But today we are not studying Shinran's teaching, so let me move to the next issue. Okay, next issue. Okay, part two. Okay, part two. Now, okay, Shakyamuni Buddha's last message and the message forgotten after the teacher's passing. Okay, now let me talk about the last message of Shakyamuni. Okay, one episode is reported in a text called the Sutra of the Final Teaching of the Buddha. Immediately before Shakyamuni passed away, he said to his disciples, very famous words, okay? He said to his disciples, rely on the Dharma, not on human beings. Rely on the Dharma, not on human beings. This message means that his disciples should consider the Dharma, truth, or truth of impermanence, their ultimate refuge, and that they should not consider any historical human being their ultimate refuge. Here Shakyamuni is saying, you must consider the Dharma your refuge, and you should not consider me, Shakyamuni, your refuge. You should not consider me, a human being, your refuge. Here, let me talk about the situation in which Shakyamuni spoke these words. When Shakyamuni was about to die, many disciples surrounded him. Probably you have seen this picture, Shakyamuni lying. Many disciples, even animals, surrounding him. And among the people surrounding him, there was Ananda, a disciple of Shakyamuni. Ananda was Shakyamuni's cousin, and he accompanied the teacher over 30 years. And Ananda was a kind of retainer for the teacher. Sitting beside the dying Shakyamuni, Ananda was crying, bitterly crying. And Ananda said, oh, my teacher is going to die. He's going to die today. What will happen to me if I lose my refuge? I will be totally lost. When Shakyamuni heard Ananda say that, he told him, Ananda, you are wrong. You are wrong in saying that. You must rely on the Dharma. You should not rely on human beings. You should not regard me as a refuge. I am a human being who passes away. I should not be your refuge. Dharma exists any place, any time. That should be your refuge. Dharma exists all the time. It existed before me, before I was born. It has existed during my lifetime. It will exist after I die. This Dharma should be your refuge. This episode tells us that Shakyamuni never claimed to have created the Dharma. He identified himself as a person who was awakened by the Dharma, who was liberated by the Dharma. The discovery of the Dharma that had existed before him, discovery of the Dharma was called awakening. Shakyamuni emphasized the importance of relying on the Dharma, relying on the Dharma, not on the human being. Now, let me move to the next message forgotten after the teacher's passing. Shakyamuni-centered Buddhism and the Dharma-centered Buddhism. From this episode concerning the final message of Shakyamuni, we can know that even when Shakyamuni was alive, there are two types of Buddhism among his disciples. The two types of Buddhism were Shakyamuni-centered Buddhism and the Dharma-centered Buddhism. Some disciples thought that Shakyamuni should be the center of Buddhism, and they took refuge in him. But other disciples thought that Dharma should be the center of Buddhism, and they took refuge in it. In the first type of Buddhism, in the Dharma, Shakyamuni-centered Buddhism, people viewed Shakyamuni as a savior, as a liberator. They viewed him as a great human being, as an ideal human being. They considered his human qualities wonderful and excellent. They considered Shakyamuni the goal of Buddhism, and they strove to emulate him through practices. In the second type of Buddhism, in the Dharma-centered Buddhism, people did not see Shakyamuni as a savior or as a liberator. They saw him as a person who was awakened by the Dharma, who was liberated by the Dharma. They thought the goal of Buddhism was not emulating him, not emulating a human being, but gaining insight into the Dharma and becoming one with it. Shakyamuni himself said that he was not a liberator, but a liberated one. He was awakened. He was awakened by the Dharma. He told disciples that Dharma should be the center of Buddhism. Probably because Shakyamuni detected the mistake of Shakyamuni-centered Buddhism that was developing in the Sangha, he cautioned his disciples. Shakyamuni, a human being, should not be the center of Buddhism, and Dharma, the truth, should be the center of Buddhism. Okay, now, Hinayana Buddhism, Shakyamuni-centered Buddhism. After Shakyamuni's passing, Shakyamuni's followers developed Shakyamuni-centered Buddhism out of deep respect for the teacher. In several centuries after Shakyamuni's death, that took place in approximately 400 BC, the Buddhist tradition called Hinayana Buddhism was formed in India. Hinayana Buddhism developed this way. When Shakyamuni passed away, his disciples lost their beloved and revered teacher. Their respect and adoration for the teacher became deeper and deeper. They regarded Shakyamuni as a genius, as the founder of the new religion. This way, after the passing of Shakyamuni, his disciples developed Shakyamuni-centered Buddhism. Okay. Next, his followers identified Buddhism with ideas and concepts, finished products that the teacher produced. As years went by, his disciples gradually forgot the lively, creative, and powerful spirit of Shakyamuni, and they remembered only his teachings. They thought the teacher left a perfect and definitive teaching, They thought the teacher left finished products. So they considered it their mission to faithfully memorize his teachings, preserve them, and transmit them. They became attached to his words, ideas, and concepts, something that the teacher had produced, the teacher had produced. They forgot the essence of Buddhism was the teacher's creative spirit, dynamic spirit. The essence of Buddhism was not the words and concepts. It was Shakyamuni's creative and dynamic spirit. Number 3, Shakyamuni's followers categorized, systematized, and dogmatized his teaching. His teaching became fixed, lifeless, and fossilized. So Shakyamuni's followers became attached to his words and concepts because they had tremendous respect for the teacher. Because they had tremendous respect for the teacher, they became attached to his teachings, words, and concepts. Of course, having deep respect for the teacher is something admirable, no doubt about it. But at the same time, there is often a danger involved in admiring a teacher. His followers started to classify, categorize, and dogmatize his teachings. They turned his teaching into a fixed system of thought. During the 3 centuries after the teacher's passing, his teachings became fixed and formalized. And to use a stronger expression, his teachings became fossilized. In this way, the Hinayana Buddhist tradition became a highly monastic and academic tradition. The lively, creative, and powerful spirit of Shakyamuni was gradually forgotten and lost. The rise of Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana criticism of the Shakyamuni-centered Buddhism of Hinayana. Number 1, about 3 centuries after Shakyamuni's passing, Mahayana Buddhism appeared in India as a reaction and criticism against Hinayana Buddhism. It was in this historical context that the Mahayana, another major Buddhist tradition, appeared in India around the 1st century BC, approximately 300 years after Shakyamuni's passing. Mahayana Buddhism appeared as a reaction and criticism against Hinayana Buddhism that had become a lifeless doctrine. Mahayana attempted to restore the original Buddhism, the Dharma-centered Buddhism. It was a revivalist movement. Mahayana Buddhists wanted to say that the authentic Buddhism was Dharma-centered Buddhism, and the Hinayana Buddhism that was centered on Shakyamuni was a wrong tradition. Mahayana Buddhists thought that Shakyamuni's contribution was the discovery of the truth, not the creation of the Dharma. Shakyamuni was awakened by the Dharma and liberated by the Dharma. That Dharma should be considered the center of Buddhism. Number 2, Mahayana Buddhist focus was not so much on the finished products that Shakyamuni produced as on the Dharma or the universal source of inspiration that produced Shakyamuni. in the eyes of the Mahayanist or the Mahayana Buddhist, Hinayana Buddhists were attached to lifeless ideas and concepts. Mahayana Buddhists believed that the most important thing in Buddhism was not Shakyamuni's ideas and concepts, but his creative spirit. They thought the most important thing in Buddhism was not the finished products that Shakyamuni produced, but his creative and producing spirit that produced Shakyamuni. In the eyes of the Mahayana Buddhists, Hinayana Buddhists were seeing only the footprints of a rabbit, something left by a rabbit. Hinayana Buddhists were seeing only the footprints or the droppings of a rabbit, something left by the rabbit. They are not seeing the dynamic and lively life of the rabbit itself. Hinayana Buddhists were interested in that which Shakyamuni produced. Hinayana Buddhists were interested in that which Shakyamuni produced, not in the source of inspiration that produced Shakyamuni. So Mahayana Buddhists wanted to restore Shakyamuni's original spirit, dynamic spirit, by restoring the Dharma-centered Buddhism, by emphasizing the importance of the Dharma that awakened and liberated the teacher. I think it's very important to know that the Mahayana Buddhists were interested in that which produced Shakyamuni. They are not interested in the products that Shakyamuni produced. Mahayana Buddhists identified the Dharma or the universal source of inspiration as Amida. Okay? It was in this Mahayana movement that ancient Indians came up with the concept of Amida. By creating the concept of Amida as a symbol of the Dharma, Mahayana Buddhists wanted to emphasize importance of the Dharma that produced Shakyamuni. They wanted to say that true Buddhism was a Dharma-centered Buddhism or Amida-centered Buddhism. So the Mahayana Buddhists composed the so-called Pure Land Sutras, such as Rajya Sutra, that talked about Amida Buddha. In order to explain the Dharma in a more concrete form, Mahayana Buddhists created the concept of Amida. When we say that Dharma liberates us, the truth liberates us, that sounds a little abstract. We always say Dharma liberates us, but that sounds a little abstract and it's difficult to understand what that means. So in order to facilitate our understanding of the Dharma, Mahayana Buddhists personified the Dharma and created the concept of Amida. Instead of saying Dharma liberates us, Mahayanists used this concept of Amida and said Amida liberates us. But the same thing, Dharma and Amida, the same thing. Okay, now let me talk about Professor Soga here. Okay, Soga's article, The Buddhism Before Shakyamuni. Okay, Ryojin Soga. I should have put his date, 1875. He lived a long life. He died at age 96. So this is his date. Okay. Some people say, many people say, Professor Soga was the most important Buddhist scholar in the last century. He was a professor at Otani University, and he later became its president. And Reverend Soga was a student of Reverend Manshi Kiyozawa. Okay. Manshi Kiyozawa, very famous teacher. Manshi Kiyozawa is known as the Shinran Shonin in modern times. Okay. And Soga was Kiyozawa's student. And Professor Soga says that Amida symbolizes the Dharma. Amida symbolizes the Dharma. But he said Amida more specifically symbolizes the innermost aspiration, Hongan. So the Hongan, okay, this word familiar to you, okay, for then what does Hongan mean, okay? The Hong has basically two meanings, okay, basic or fundamental or innermost, and it could be translated primal and original. And this means wish, desire, aspiration, and vow, okay, vow. So this Hongan is usually translated as a primal vow or original vow. But this is a secondary meaning. Primary meaning of Hongan is basic, fundamental. I translate this innermost. Or this one first, primary meaning of Gan is desire, aspiration. See? So usually translated as primal vow, original vow. Okay, but translating Hongan into these words all the time is misleading. Okay, so Shinshu scholars have been translating Hongan always as the primal vow, innermost or original vow. So this translation makes Jodo Shinshu very complicated. This has been translated basic desire or innermost aspiration. This is the first meaning of it. Okay? So we have to use these two different translations. Okay? And it should be translated, primarily it should be translated as innermost aspiration or basic desire. Okay? Instead of translating it primal vow or original vow, makes Jodo Shinshu very esoteric, mysterious. See? Because what is original vow? See? So difficult to understand. Okay? So that's we have today I translate this basic desire or innermost aspiration. Okay? So Hongan and the Dharma as the same thing. Okay? And this is the source of inspiration of Shakyamuni. Okay? So Dharma produced Shakyamuni. Dharma is the source of Shakyamuni's aspiration. Same way, Soga Ryojin says, the innermost aspiration, Hongan produced Shakyamuni. Hongan is the source of inspiration for Shakyamuni. The Hongan produced him. Then what is Hongan? Hongan means it is basic desire, innermost aspiration, basic. Then what is basic desire? This is the most basic and fundamental desire. In a sense, it is oldest and earliest human desire. It is a desire that differentiates humans from other animals. Hongan is aspiration to become a Buddha, to become a real human being. All of us have this Hongan. Now, this is the deepest human aspiration. We have all kinds of desire to be rich and famous, but that's not the deepest desire. The deepest desires, aspiration we have is to fulfill our human lives, to become a real human beings. It is the desire to live the most meaningful and fulfilling life as a human being. That's what called Hongan. Okay, deepest human wish. Okay, and Dharma and this desire are synonymous. This is this Dharma or the desire that produced Shakyamuni, not that Shakyamuni produced this desire that was not, it is not that Shakyamuni produced the Dharma. Okay, so the story of Dharmaka, larger sutra talks about this story of Dharmaka. This is the Dharmaka going this, okay? He met his teacher, okay? And deeply moved by this, okay? This teacher, Buddha, symbolized this Dharma, okay? Dharma direction. So this is the story of Dharma, okay? This is the symbolizing or personifying Dharma. Okay? Dharma is everything in Buddhism. Okay? Dharma is that which liberates. Okay? So this story is explaining the Dharma, personifying this or symbolizing this as a person. Okay, so this is the story. Okay, so the Dharmakara, this young seeker. This is a symbol of the Hongan, innermost aspiration. This Hongan. So this is a Hongan story. Okay? So deeply moved by the teacher, this seeker, young seeker, awakens this Hongan, okay? This aspiration to become a Buddha exactly like him. Okay? So he starts his practice here. So eventually he goes like this direction, turns around like this, okay? So finally he becomes a Buddha like this teacher. Okay? This is the Buddhahood. See, Buddha. This is the same Buddha. He said, so this is a Hongan. This is a Hongan. Deepest human aspiration to fulfill his life, to live the most meaningful life. So this Hongan gradually kind of deepened, perfected. Finally, this Hongan fulfilled. This is Amida Buddha. Amida Buddha. So with this story, yeah, see this young seeker, this symbolizing this Hongan, okay, and this symbol, Amida Buddha symbolizing this the perfect studentship, perfect student. Okay? So this aspiration, the innermost aspiration, means that I want to become a seeker, say continuous seeker. Dynamic seeker. So he gained more insight. The more insight he gained in this dynamic flow of life, the more insight he gained into dynamic flow of life, the more studentship he perfected. See, so the Dharma or the studentship. I told you, becoming one with the dynamic flow of life means becoming a dynamic seeker, being liberated from all fixed ideas, concepts. See, so this studentship, dynamic studentship is real. So the Amida Buddha, becoming Amida Buddha means Dharmakara becoming a perfect student, say perfect seeker, kind of eternal seeker, eternal student. So his name is limitless wisdom, compassion. So see, he keeps on seeking wisdom and compassion limitlessly, no end to it. See? So this is the eternal student. The Dharmakara initially had a little bit of this aspiration to seek Dharma, but the more Dharma he received, the more powerful person he becomes. See, more dynamic he becomes. Eventually he becomes perfect student, the eternal seeker. So this is a story, and this story is personifying this. So this story is explaining what does it mean to become one with the Dharma. What kind of person do we become when we become one with the Dharma? See, so this shows us that the person who becomes one with the Dharma becomes a perfect seeker, eternal seeker, limitless, no end to it, limitless seeking wisdom and compassion. See, this is the personification of the Dharma. See, so Soga Ryojin says this is the basis of Jodo Shinshu. It is because of the spirit, this is a source of inspiration. And many historical people appeared here, who embodied this. So this is the kind of common denominator underlying all historical Buddhas. Okay? This is a common denominator or prototype. Okay, prototype for underlying all Buddhist historical. These are all historical Buddhas. And this is a kind of common denominator. Okay, or the universal basis, universal spiritual basis. Okay? So this part, this aspiration is that which makes humans humans. This is the earliest and most ancient aspiration. When people started to have this aspiration, people became human beings. Okay? So this is the kind of earliest and most fundamental. That's what the Hongan means. Okay? So Professor Soga says, Hongan preceded Shakyamuni. Okay? Shakyamuni came out of the Hongan tradition that existed a long time before him. Professor Soga wrote a famous article entitled Buddhism Before Shakyamuni. Okay? The Buddhism, many people think Buddhism started with Shakyamuni, but Professor Soga says, no. Buddhism began when the Hongan started. Hongan started. Hongan produced Shakyamuni. It's not the case. Shakyamuni produced Hongan. This is the dynamic and creative inspiration. This is the basis of history, basis of human existence. When this Hongan started, human beings started. So Shakyamuni was produced by this Hongan. Shakyamuni came out of this Hongan tradition. That Soga Ryojin said. So the Shakyamuni is one of the many historical Buddhas who are born out of Hongan. Okay. So for example, I can give you one concrete example of that Buddhism didn't start from Shakyamuni. See? Hinayana Buddhist says the Buddhism started by Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni was a genius. He was the founder of the Buddhism. Okay? That's Hinayana view. But the Mahayana view or the Jodo Shinshu view or Soga's view is that no. Shakyamuni was an awakened person, awakened by the Hongan, by the Dharma. See? And okay, do you remember the story of the Prince Siddhartha going out of the fourth gate? What happened when he went out of the fourth gate? He met a monk, traveling monk, whose face was shining because of his wisdom. And Prince Siddhartha was deeply moved by the person, and I want to be like him. The aspiration, innermost aspiration, Hongan was awakened by the traveling monk. See, that episode itself tells us that there are Buddhas before Shakyamuni. Buddhas before Shakyamuni. There was Hongan tradition. See? So here, see, this was Shakyamuni. And see, this was the monk, traveling monk. He embodied this power, dynamic power of studentship, being one with Dharma and living such a powerful life, being shaken by this. This Shakyamuni was attached to all kinds of fixed ideas, opinions, and suffering all kinds of things, distraction, frustrated. But he met this person who was living his life with such a light-hearted mind, see, without any attachment to fixed things. See, perfect learner, freely traveling and learning from all kinds of teachers. See, this is a Hongan person. Hongan existed. Hongan awakened Shakyamuni. See? So Shakyamuni didn't start Buddhism. So Soga wrote the article. The title of the article is Buddhism Before Shakyamuni. So Shakyamuni himself says, okay, Shakyamuni himself, there are Buddhas before me. See? Sounds new to you. Shakyamuni said, in some of the earliest sutras, okay, Shakyamuni said, there are seven Buddhas in the past. There are seven Buddhas before me. Okay? Shakyamuni himself said, okay, I'm not the first Buddha. I'm not the originator of the Buddhahood. There are Buddhahood before me. There are seven Buddha. What does it mean? Seven. What does the seven number seven means? In ancient India, okay, in ancient Indian context, word seven means innumerable. Okay, seven. It's a kind of a symbolic number. Doesn't mean only seven. Okay, seven means many, innumerable. So Shakyamuni says there are many Buddhas before me. And he said, my contribution is I discovered this ancient town, Dharma town. There are many Buddhas there. Okay? So I didn't create Buddhism. I didn't create Buddhahood. Buddhahood exists, Dharma exists before. That awakened me. That Shakyamuni himself tells us that. Okay? According to Professor Soga, Shinran's Buddhism is based upon the view that Buddhism started with the innermost aspiration, not with Shakyamuni. Okay? This is what the Buddhism didn't start with Shakyamuni. Soga says that Buddhism, Shinran's Buddhism is based upon the view, on this view of history. Buddhist history is for Shinran. For Shinran, Buddhist history means the history of the Hongan, in which Shakyamuni was one of the many Buddhas who are awakened and liberated by the Hongan. Okay, let me read the next section. Shin Buddhist teaching of the two Buddhas, Shakyamuni. Now you understand why Jodo Shinshu talks about two Buddhas. So the sutras, like larger sutra, talk about the two Buddhas, Shakyamuni Buddha and Amida Buddha. They say that it is Amida Buddha that symbolizes the Dharma that liberated Shakyamuni. Okay? And Shakyamuni is one of the many Buddhas who are liberated by Amida or the Dharma. Okay? So the Shinran considered the larger sutra the most important text as the basis of the Jodo Shinshu. And this larger sutra talks about Shakyamuni as one of the many Buddhas who are praising Amida or the Hongan, because Shakyamuni was liberated by Hongan. Amida, this is the Amida Buddha. Amida's power of Hongan. Power of Hongan was embodied by many historical teachers, many Buddhas, and Shakyamuni also met one of these many Buddhas, and awakened. He became Buddha. See? So the two Buddhas, Amida Buddha, Dharma, Amida Buddha. Okay? And Jodo Shinshu people. Okay? And if you go to Jodo Shinshu temple, have you ever seen a statue of Shakyamuni Buddha in Jodo Shinshu temples? No. None of the Jodo Shinshu temples installs the statue. Why? Why is it so? Because it is not Shakyamuni who liberates us. See? It is Dharma, it is Amida Buddha that liberates us. Jodo Shinshu is emphasizing authentic Buddhism is Dharma-centered Buddhism, not the Shakyamuni-centered Buddhism. That's what Shakyamuni taught us. They don't make a refuge out of historical people, human beings. Our Dharma should be our refuge. Okay? That's what Shakyamuni taught. So the Jodo Shinshu tradition is faithfully transmitting this essential teaching of Shakyamuni. Buddhism should be Dharma-centered, so Amida-centered, not Shakyamuni. So people don't put any statue of Shakyamuni in the Buddhist temples in Jodo Shinshu. Okay, because Shakyamuni is one of us. He is one of the liberated. Not he. Shakyamuni wasn't a liberator. Not a liberator. He was a liberated, just like us. Shakyamuni thought. Shakyamuni himself thought. He never thought he was a genius or he was something special. He thought he was no different from other people. Shakyamuni certainly thought, see, as he was enlightened, he thought other people can equally attain the same enlightenment. See? Because Dharma is there. Same Dharma is there. And so if we, or any one of us gain insight in Dharma and overwhelmed by it and permeated by it and become one with it, we are not different from Shakyamuni. We are not different from Shakyamuni. That's what Shakyamuni taught. Okay? But Hinayana people kind of idolized Shakyamuni, made a special kind of savior out of Shakyamuni. That was a mistake. Then Mahayana Buddhism, particularly Jodo Shinshu, corrected that mistake by emphasizing the importance of Amida Buddha. Amida does not symbolize God. Buddhism does not talk about the divine savior. Okay? But unfortunately, many followers of Jodo Shinshu think Amida is like God, divine savior, coming to save us from heaven or Pure Land. That's total misunderstanding. Okay? Okay. Amida Buddha symbolizes the Dharma. Okay? And certainly Amida is not a historical person. Okay? So that's why we differentiate the historical Buddha and Dharma, or the kind of I said common denominator underlying all kinds of historical Buddhas, okay? Kind of prototype, prototype underlying of the universal source of universal aspiration. Okay? That produced Shakyamuni, okay? As symbolized, okay? As this Dharmaka symbolizing Hongan, and Amida Buddha symbolized the fulfillment of Hongan. Okay? Aspiration to become a perfect student became the perfect student. Okay? So by reading story, we can understand what it means for us to become one with the Dharma. When we become one with Dharma, we become nothing but the seeker and learner, being liberated from all fixed ideas, assertions, and opinions. Nothing but seek and learn, because Dharma is so fresh and new, okay? Not stagnant, continuous flow of life, fresh and new flow of life. Becoming one with it means that we become a perfect student. That's why Shinran said, as far as I, Shinran, am concerned, I have no disciples. I have no disciples. What does it mean? He doesn't have disciples. That means he's not a teacher. He has nothing to teach. That means he is a student. That's all. That's all. The only thing I have to do is keep on hearing the Dharma, learning the Dharma. That's the only thing necessary, because I received this Hongan. Okay? Hongan. Dharma makes me become a student, nothing else. Okay, that's all I wanted to say today. Okay, so anyway, I hope I answered the basic question: what is Amida Buddha? Okay, so okay, let me conclude my talk with Gassho. Okay, Namandavutsu, Namandavutsu, Namandavutsu. So the Pure Land symbolizes the sphere of world of wisdom, or sphere of wisdom. Okay, so when there is a Buddha, okay, when there is a Buddha, there's a sangha around the person. Okay, so the spiritual kind of realm that accompany the Buddhahood. Okay? So Pure Land is not does not exist in the world after death. Okay, that's a total misunderstanding of Jodo Shinshu. Okay, that's a Jodo Shu teaching. Jodo Shu teaching say we say Namandava to prepare ourselves for the birth in Pure Land after death. Okay, that's Jodo Shu, Pure Land school. Okay, Jodo Shinshu, in Shinran's teaching. Okay, Shinran never talks about birth in Pure Land after death. Okay? It is a death. Spiritual death we experience here now. Okay, that's what the Shinran is talking. Shinran says at the Shinjin moment. Okay, it's almost like this. Okay, I talked about Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni said, my life is already spent. Universal life is already established. Okay? Talking about the death of the old self, birth of the new self. Okay, old self is this, the birth of the new self. Okay. The old self is going this self, and this is the new self that is one with the Dharma, that is one with the other power. Okay, so this death of this self and birth, see, so the born into the sphere. This person has this so-called dualistic world or dualistic cocoon. He has his own kind of world. And we could call it a defined world. Okay, but coming out of this. Okay? So that world of this is the world of wisdom. Shinran's teaching everything. Buddha is wisdom. Okay? This land with Shinran defines Pure Land with one word. Okay? Officially, in the beginning of the fifth volume of Kyogyo Shinshu, one word he used. This is the land of immeasurable light. Okay? Land of immeasurable light. Okay? This world of Buddha's wisdom. So we are born from the human world of human wisdom to the world of Buddha's wisdom. Okay, so spiritual death that's talking about. Okay, not the physical. Okay? Certainly, it's a universal, universal power. So the definition of Hongan, nothing Buddhistic about it. Okay, it is, as I said, I defined it, or the Professor Soga would define it. Okay, it is the deepest aspiration that makes humans humans. This is aspiration that distinguishes human beings from other animals. Okay, so it's not something monopolized by Buddhists alone. Okay, so this is the universal source. Okay, so the Amida Buddhahood is that Amida Buddha is a symbol for encompassing all, excluding none. Okay, so it is Amida symbolizes the wisdom of non-discrimination. Okay, so if we have human wisdom, discriminative wisdom, okay, then we say, oh, he's Buddhist, he's not, he's a Christian, he's a Muslim. See, this human wisdom in the world of Amida's Pure Land, okay, world of non-dualistic wisdom. See, all people are same, okay, same. That's the kind of world we have to be born. See, before we are born into Pure Land, we have all kinds of ideas. He's a Christian, I'm a Buddhist, bragging about the superiority of the Buddhist. That's only human dimension, okay, dualistic human thinking. See? But we have to be liberated from that kind of stuffy and restrained world. Okay, that's the liberation. See, so that even after you experience Shinjin or liberation, so-called Satori or Shinjin, if you still claim you're Buddhist and bragging about your identities, it's totally wrong. Okay, being born in Pure Land means see all-encompassing wisdom and all appreciating wisdom. You are liberated from this dualistic, okay, discriminating wisdom. That's the whole purpose of, see, so certainly Hongan doesn't discriminate Buddhists from others. See, we become, goal of Buddhism is just becoming true human beings, period. Okay? You don't have to become Buddhist, okay? Buddhism, the Jodo Shinshu is so wonderful. Buddhism is so wonderful, because we can be liberated from all kinds of Buddhist or religious identities, or religious labels, religious, things, that's the whole purpose. I appreciate Shinshu as Buddhist because I can be free. I don't have to be Buddhist. I'm just human being. So this Dharma gonna become Amida Buddha means just becoming nothing but ordinary human being. That's what Shinran said. I'm not a Buddhist. Shinran said, I'm not neither monk nor lay person. Okay, that he said, I'm not a Buddhist. I'm a foolish ordinary person. That's what this is all about. Being liberated from all hang-ups. Okay, that's what the core of Jodo Shinshu. Now Jodo Shinshu is institutionalized. The people get ordained, and ministers. These are all kind of crazy things that developed after Shinran. Okay, go back to Shinran. Shinran said, "I'm not a Buddhist. I'm a foolish ordinary person. I'm not a teacher. I'm just a simple student." That's what we understand when we really understand Hongan teachings, okay? It's so sad, Buddhism, Jodo Shinshu became such an institutionalized thing. That's the last thing Shinran imagined would happen, okay?